So we're joined today by Rahm Emanuel, a man who's worn many hats over his career, from a member of Congress representing Illinois to being former President Barack Obama's chief of staff, as most recently Chicago mayor, as well as the ambassador to Japan under former President Joe Biden. So thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you.
Rahm. So you've become a very prominent voice in your party, the Democratic Party, most recently, as the party sort of figures out what it's going to do or what it's going to look like post last year's election. You've made a case sort of throughout your whole career about the centrist, the power of the centrist point of view within the party. I mean, what do you make of the New York Democratic primary? Are you sort of frustrated that someone who is a lot more left-leaning in Zohran Mamdani has sort of, come to the surface up there?
No, so I mean, if I step back for a second, I mean, you could argue at one. There's multiple layers. So one layer, he had a perfect storm, given his opponents, etc. Second layer, he did run a very disciplined campaign and focused. I think a third layer or a check. It wasn't just affordability, but he made the message of affordability feel, sound, and look like change. So he fused both affordability and change in a time in which people were pretty angry at the establishment. And the opponents played establishment. They played their role that made his message sharper. So that's kind of one, sorry about this. That's one take, I would say. On another level, well, people, I mean, I don't ascribe to his solutions, obviously, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I said this the other day to a Democratic member of Congress that there's more agreement among moderates / centrists and progressive to far left on the critique of the problem. My words are that the system is rigged against people's success. I don't know you very well. You don't know me very well, but my kids are going to be okay. They're going to benefit. But that the system used to be, by way of reference, used to be the basic contract was if you worked hard, you got ahead. Today, if you work hard, you're barely running in place. You're only building up a lot of sweat and you're on a treadmill. And you just want a shot and you're getting the shaft. That critique exists across the spectrum of the party. Now, I don't mean to make this personal, but I'm to illustrate the point. When I was mayor, I dealt with food deserts. I brought all the grocery store managers in, all the presidents, and I said, look, man, one of the answers that came out of our process was, if you give me your 4-year stores where you want to open, all of them, and you add a food desert area, I'll treat all those 5 stores as a single application to encourage, because you're going to save a ton of money, a ton of time, and you'll have certainty over the next 5 years where you want to go. That's how wasn't totally successful, but we made a big knock on food deserts. And we got Mariano's in Bronzeville, Jewel in Woodlawn. The last grocery store was 1976 there. Now, he wants to try running a grocery store. I think that's a little hard, but that's what he wants to do. So the critique is uniformity. The solutions is where there's disagreement. But as I've said all along, and I've made it core to my message, and again, we don't share the same thing, is, look, the American dream is unaffordable, and that's unacceptable. People get a mortgage deduction on their second or third home, and other people can't even get a home. People used to have a paycheck get them to the 31st of the month. Now they're taking money out of their 401k, their savings, just as a backfill. I grew up, my dad was a pediatrician. You used to ask a doctor for a second opinion or a nurse, some other healthcare professional. Now you have to ask the insurance company. That's your second opinion. And so to me, this is a real problem. And the American dream and accessibility and affordability and maintaining it is become a struggle. And it should be a shot.
So I get what you're saying about this idea of sort of solutions and sort of figuring out what the problem is. But Republicans have latched onto this idea of his solutions.
Oh,
Do you think that it's problematic for the party that you have, someone of this like high profile nature that could caricature,
yeah,
what
I mean,
what
look,
you're trying to do?
well, first of all, in November, there will be three elections. There'll be a New Jersey gubernatorial race with a woman who was a former member of the national security apparatus of the United States. There will be one in Virginia. And if also a woman who comes out of the national security apparatus. Both are moderates. Both are running statewide. Both New Jersey and Virginia have slightly, I would argue, more influence about the trends and ideas of a campaign. Do I know that the Republicans are trying to make the Democratic nominee the face of the party? That's what I would do if I were them. Doesn't mean it's true. Okay, but I know what they're trying to do tactically. If you ask me what I was worried about, I'd be less worried about that than the spillover of his race into the New Jersey media market of the northern part of New Jersey, impacting, I don't think it's happened yet, but could be impacting the New Jersey gubernatorial race. I think she's running a very, very good race, smart race. So if you ask me, my mercury level's not where, but if you ask me, I know what the Trump people are doing, but I know what matters. I'm focusing on both New Jersey, Virginia, the House races, etc. Then I have to say one other thing. If you look at every special election and every primary since November 2024, Democratic turnout is fully caffeinated. It's on double espresso. That's not true for the Republicans. And so to me, the Democrats are ready to vote. We're getting very good numbers out of independent voters. And to me, that's more important. But I know what they're trying to do. It doesn't mean it's true and doesn't mean it will work.
Well, the other thing that they're trying to do is they're also trying to let this sort of ghost of Biden haunt what Democrats are doing now. We're obviously seeing that play out on Capitol Hill with congressional hearings and things like that. I mean, how do you think that Democrats should counter that narrative?
Well, I mean, that's also, I mean, the counter on that is, they want to look backwards. We want to look forward. They don't want you to know about all the cuts in healthcare. Not only, I mean, my view, and I've said this publicly before, and I'll say it again, which is I'd have everybody at Donald Trump's inaugural, a portrait of them and their net worth and how much they're going to get out of this tax bill. And on this side of the podium, I'd have 40 kids. They just want to see a pediatrician. And the Republicans are going to prevent that. But these guys are going to get a tax cut they don't even know they deserve. Jeff Bezos, the very weekend he was having his wedding in Venice, they were debating in the Senate how many kids are going to be denied health care. This is a perfect, yes, they want to look backwards because they don't want you to look at what they're going to do to you. Now, another iteration of that, and I make this argument beyond the general health care, one of the gains America's made in the last few years on reducing opiate deaths have come because of the dollars in Medicaid for behavioral treatment and treatment. You're going to see those numbers on opiate deaths do a flip and go the other way, having been very clear what the role Medicaid plays in the reduction of opiate deaths over the last 3 years. And that's going to get reversed. The third thing is all these cuts on new energy supply is going to lead to higher prices in your utility bill. It's one of the fastest growing pieces of inflation is energy prices and utilities. And the Republicans decided to make it harder to get cheaper energy. And I think that's another argument to be made. And they don't want you to they want you to focus on the last election when we want to focus on you and your family's future.
This is a bit of a sneaky question, but given you are close with Obama, I mean, did he have any insight to you, or did he share his feelings with you about, Biden's decision to run again, and his campaign?
First of all, I'm not going to, first of all, no. Second of all, if he did, I wouldn't tell you.
It's my prerogative to try and ask these things. I mean, we've sort of spoken about the off-year elections, but I mean, I think we're seeing the White House even pivot to the midterms. I mean, what do you think is the ideal Dem strategy heading into that? I mean, we've seen this week that they've tried to pick up, even Jeffrey Epstein sort of talking points. I mean, would you encourage things like that? Or would you sort of go back to this idea because you spoke a lot about affordability in your opening?
Look, my thing, I don't know, on the Jeffrey Epstein, look, they want every shiny bauble there is. the Republicans, to distract you from what they just did. In that bill is the roadmap for the midterms. Now, remember, when you have a Congress and the White House in the same party, there's a physics to the election. It's a referendum election. And unlike, I mean, going back in American history, when Truman ran against a do-nothing Congress, this is a rubber stamp Republican Congress to Donald Trump. It was true when 1994 midterm for Bill Clinton, true 2010 midterm for Obama, true 2006 midterm for George Bush, true 2018 midterm for Donald Trump. There is a physics. High turnout by opposition party, independents break 2-1 to the opposition, and lower turnout among incumbents. That exists. This bill is the case you want to take to the public, and you want to make it about the fact that the Republicans are rubber stamped to Donald Trump. The one thing you can see very clearly among independent voters, they do not like an untethered, unchecked, unmoored Donald Trump. And the Congress is playing a supplicant role when they should be playing something else. And that's our opportunity.
Do you have any concerns about sort of Democratic
Yes.
fundraising just after like the Harris, like former Vice President Kamala Harris obviously raised so much money and it didn't have or it didn't yield dividends. I mean, you've done so much fundraising in your career, you know, even for like the Democratic House campaigns. I mean, do you think that there'll be enough in the coffers to, you know, help you guys flip any balances of power?
Look, I think the party has done well historically on the fundraising. It's not what worries me about the party. It worries me about what it was something you can't control, which is I saw the other day that Trump's PAC has like $1.6 billion in it. So I'm more concerned about not what I do believe we'll have the resources we need. It's whether you have the resources you need based on what the other side is also doing. But I'm not as close to it as I used to be like lived and breathed it.
So the other thing that is obviously sort of the elephant in the room is talk about you running yourself in 2028. I mean, a question I have for you is you obviously have this reputation as, you know, Rambo from, you know, your very assertive nature to
I would call it
politics. What was that? Sorry?
direct.
Direct. That's a nice way to put it. I mean, a lot of obviously I know that you've won elected office since then, but I mean, a lot of politics is retail politics. It's like you want to have a beer with them. Are you worried that this reputation that you've developed over the years, you know, that might take a little bit of convincing in voters' minds that, you know, you're the one that they would want to have a beer with?
Well, first of all, I am 6 for 6 in my own elections, never lost. And in a city where ethnic politics is pretty strong. So that's just one thing. You couldn't do politics in Chicago without doing retail politics. Second, look, I'm betting on a currency that there's an appetite for candor, authenticity, and straight talk. That people that just do talking points and sound like regular politicians, that's not only passe, people don't want that. We'll see. Now, I do have a career, not just of being direct, but when you needed somebody to do the hard things, which is what is required in the Oval Office, I got the call. When somebody had to take on the Washington gun lobby to pass the assault weapon ban, Mr. Rough and Tumble was the direct line. When somebody had to take on the insurance companies to make sure 10 million kids got health insurance, right here, I got the phone call. When you had to pass reforming the banks and regulations around the banks, I got the call. When it came to suing the pharmaceutical industries, the first city and no other state even did it on opiate overdose and what they were doing, Chicago did it. When I took on the industry, the educational bureaucracy and making community college free, first, if you earned a B average, first city to do it. So yeah, I don't shy away from fights. And if you think the Oval Office is a place for going along and getting along, I'm not your guy. But trust me, that's a business of rough and tumble. I've played it, I know it, and I know how to take on the very people that have been giving people the shaft around here.
And what's your process
And
like in
how do you
terms
know that people don't like Ben?
yeah, no, I'll have to ask them when we go on the campaign trail.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'll go on the campaign trail and we'll see whether just reading talking points with no heartfelt, real commitment to it versus somebody that's going to tell you the truth. Now, you could argue. Sometimes I'll tell you my opinion, even when you don't ask for it. That's fair. But here's the thing. Nobody walks away from a meeting saying, I don't know what his position is.
So another person that sort of speculated is another Illinois politician, the governor up there, JB Pritzker. I mean, is there room in a hypothetical Democratic Party for two people that have similar backgrounds or at least from the similar state or the same state?
I don't know. I mean, 2016, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and Governor Bush all were running from Florida. Yeah, no. The difference there is JB and I are friends. It'll be awkward. So, but the question isn't whether there's enough room. The question is, do you have enough ideas? Do you have the record and the strength to have not just the ideas, but the ability to execute and see it real? This is in my time, as I said before, I think a president has to be comfortable in the family room and understand the issues that are pressing on families, comfortable in the classroom and making sure that our educational system meets its goals, comfortable in the boardroom and creating jobs, comfortable in the situation room for the crisis, and periodically be comfortable in the emergency room. And if you haven't done those, you're not ready for it.
And then just to close out, I'd love to get your thoughts on sort of two news of the day kind of questions. So I'm working on a story about how this White House is like there's less sort of palace intrigue. It seems to be a lot more
Yeah.
drama free. I mean, you work that job as chief of staff. How much do you think it is Susie Wiles? And how much do you think it's just that they've placed this premium on loyalty so there's less knife fights over political turf?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you said that, but I've read reports about the Secretary Treasurer and Elon Musk having a screaming match in the hallway. So when you tell me there's no drama, maybe I'm reading different things than you are. And it sounds like the president doesn't want any competition for the drama since he likes to make it himself. So maybe it's just a displaced area where the drama is. I do think there's chaos and there's ups, downs. You saw already a national security advisor, I wouldn't say fired, but moved to somewhere else. The irony being he was removed for even thinking about discussing bombing Iran, which is what the president eventually did 2 months later. You don't have an operating National Security Council. You have chaos. This week. Weapons today are now being delivered, sold to NATO members who are going to get it to Ukraine after the Pentagon cut them off. You had dual negotiations going on with Venezuela, competing negotiations for prisoner swap, so to say. So there's an ample amount of chaos and makeup, and it's basically not that the Oval is always the center of gravity of activity, but there's enough, I would say, you've eliminated the National Security Council and moved it into the Oval Office from the Situation Room. I'm not sure that you're getting the best politics, policy, or posturing that effort.
And then just one last question on this area of foreign policy, just because you were most recently posted in Japan. I mean, what do you make of the Trump's trade policy, the tariffs that were announced,
Yeah.
Delayed and then announced, and then delayed and then announced. I mean, there is sort of, speculation that there is going to be a trade deal. I mean, even though it's been painful to get to it, do you think that the results are worth it?
Well, that's a longer discussion. That's like a much longer. No, two things I would say. Look, tariffs are a policy tool, and they're being treated as a play toy. I mean, waking up one day, I'm on a 50% on Brazil because I don't like the way they're treating the former president. So it's become a play toy and for the president just to spark and create chaos. And it's not being. I have my own views about tariffs, etc. What kind of instrument they should be. They should be a tool in your economic toolbox, not the toolbox itself. I wrote recently, as you probably saw in the Washington Post, you may not have, how since China really has, in 2012, when Xi comes to power and used coercion, intellectual property that is, and mercantilism is core to their economic strategy, we have imposed in one way or another 5 different kind of national industrial policies. And I walk away with a set of principles based on both the success and failures of each of them that I think should be core because it's a part of our economic strategy. So I think my answer, I suppose, the shorthand is tariffs are a tool, shouldn't be a blunt tool. They are. I don't think they're as effective. By way of reference, when President Trump walked into the Oval Office, there were 400,000 to 500,000 manufacturing jobs with help wanted signs. Not one of the tariff policies has filled one of those manufacturing jobs. It'd have been better to figure out how to train in a expedited, quick way 400,000 people for those jobs, and you'd be 400,000 manufacturing jobs ahead of where the tariffs are. Nobody can point to. I can see a lot of factories that have been canceled. I can see a lot of prices that have been passed through to consumers. I can't find a manufacturing third shift that's been added at a factory because of the tariffs. So we did the CHIPS Act, the IRA, the auto bailout, and the response to COVID all have deployed different elements of what I call a national industrial policy. To me, that's what we should be doing.
I appreciate you. And if our readers and our viewers want to see more of this content, they can visit our website at washingtonexaminer.com.